Spain, a nation that once controlled half the globe, where the sun literally never set on its empire. From the Philippines to Peru, from Mexico to Milan, Spanish conquistadors, missionaries, and merchants reshaped continents, destroyed civilizations, and built one of history's most powerful empires. But how did a collection of medieval kingdoms on Europe's southwestern edge become the world's first true superpower? The answer is a story of religious zealotry, maritime genius, brutal conquest, and ultimately, spectacular collapse. Today, advanced AI technology allows us to transform centuries-old maps, paintings, and engravings into photorealistic recreations, bringing Spain's dramatic rise and fall back to life. Join me as we uncover the entire history of Spain, from ancient tribes to global empire and beyond. Long before Spain existed, the Iberian Peninsula was home to Celtic and Iberian tribes, people who farmed the fertile valleys, mined the rich silver deposits, and traded with Phoenician merchants sailing from the eastern Mediterranean. The Greeks established colonies along the coast. The Carthaginians built a power base here, using Iberian resources and soldiers in their wars against Rome. Then came Rome itself. In 218 BCE, Roman legions landed during the Second Punic War, and over 2 centuries of brutal warfare, they conquered the entire peninsula. This wasn't peaceful integration, it was blood-soaked subjugation. Entire tribes enslaved, cities destroyed, resistance crushed with legendary Roman efficiency. The Siege of Numantia became a symbol of Iberian defiance, where defenders chose mass suicide over surrender. But Rome didn't just conquer, it transformed. Roads sliced through mountains, connecting cities. Aqueducts brought water to thirsty settlements. Latin replaced local languages. Roman law, architecture, and culture seeped into everything. Cities like Tarraco, Corduba, and Emerita Augusta became thriving provincial centers, complete with forums, temples, and amphitheaters where gladiators fought and died for entertainment. For 6 centuries, Hispania, as Rome called it, was the empire's breadbasket and treasury, producing grain, olive oil, wine, and precious metals. It gave Rome emperors: Trajan, Hadrian, Theodosius. The peninsula became thoroughly Romanized, creating a cultural foundation that still echoes in modern Spain. Then came the collapse. In 409 CE, as Rome's grip weakened, Germanic tribes poured across the Pyrenees: Vandals, Alans, Suevi, and finally the Visigoths. Cities that had stood for centuries burned. The sophisticated Roman infrastructure crumbled. Hispania descended into chaos. The Visigoths eventually established control, creating a kingdom centered in Toledo. These were warrior kings, Germanic in origin but increasingly Romanized and Christianized. They adopted Roman administrative practices, codified laws, and tried to unite the fractured peninsula under their rule. But unity proved elusive. The Visigothic kingdom was plagued by succession crises, civil wars, and rebellions. Nobles fought nobles. Kings were murdered and replaced with alarming frequency. The countryside fell into feudal patterns, with local strongmen protecting their territories while nominal kings struggled to maintain authority. Then, in 711, everything changed. Across the narrow Strait of Gibraltar, just 8 miles of water separating Europe from Africa, a new power was rising. Islam had exploded out of Arabia, conquering with breathtaking speed. Syria, Egypt, North Africa, all falling to Muslim armies in less than a century. Now they turned their eyes to Hispania. The invasion was swift and devastating. Berber and Arab forces under Tariq ibn Ziyad landed at Gibraltar in 711 with around 7,000 troops. They met the Visigothic army under King Roderick at the Battle of Guadalete. It was a massacre. Roderick died, his army shattered, and within 7 years, Muslim forces had conquered nearly the entire peninsula. What followed was one of history's great cultural flowerings. Al-Andalus, as the Muslims called it, became a beacon of civilization in medieval Europe. Córdoba, its capital, grew into possibly the largest, most sophisticated city in Western Europe, with a population approaching 500,000. The Great Mosque of Córdoba, with its forest of red and white horseshoe arches, represented architectural genius and religious devotion merged into stone. The streets of Córdoba were paved and lit at night, while London and Paris wallowed in mud and darkness. Running water flowed through homes, public baths dotted every neighborhood, gardens filled with orange trees, fountains, and elaborate geometric tilework created oases of beauty and tranquility. Scholars translated Greek and Roman texts, preserving knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. They advanced mathematics, introducing Europe to algebra and Arabic numerals. Medical texts written in Al-Andalus became standard references for centuries. Philosophers like Averroes and Maimonides, Muslim and Jew working side by side, pushed the boundaries of human thought. This was convivencia, the living together of Muslim, Christian, and Jewish communities. It wasn't perfect tolerance. Christians and Jews were dhimmi, protected but second-class citizens who paid special taxes. But compared to the religious violence elsewhere in medieval Europe, Al-Andalus was remarkably cosmopolitan. Yet cracks appeared early. The Islamic world fractured into competing caliphates, then into petty kingdoms called taifas, each jealous of the others, each vulnerable to outside pressure. And in the Christian north, in the rain-soaked mountains the Muslims never fully conquered, resistance was gathering strength. The Reconquista wasn't a single war. It was 8 centuries of intermittent warfare, punctuated by periods of peace, intermarriage, and cultural exchange. Christian kingdoms in the north, Asturias, Leon, Castile, Aragon, Navarre, slowly pushed south, conquering territory, establishing settlements, building castles. This was holy war, crusade given religious justification by the church. Warriors who died fighting Muslims were promised salvation. Military orders like the Knights of Santiago and Calatrava combined monasticism with warfare, creating warrior monks who held frontier territories. The victories came slowly. In 1085, Alfonso VI of Leon and Castile captured Toledo, the old Visigothic capital. The loss shocked the Islamic world, which called for help from the Almoravids, fierce Berber warriors from North Africa who temporarily halted Christian expansion. Then came the Almohads, even more fundamentalist, who restored Muslim power before they too weakened and collapsed. By the 1200s, the balance had shifted decisively. The great Christian victory at Las Navas de Tolosa in 1212 broke Muslim military power in Iberia. Ferdinand III of Castile conquered Córdoba in 1236, Seville in 1248. James I of Aragon took Valencia. The great cities of Al-Andalus fell one by one, their mosques converted into churches, their Muslim populations expelled, enslaved, or forced to convert. By 1492, only Granada remained, a small mountainous kingdom clinging to survival by paying tribute and playing Christian kingdoms against each other. Its rulers built the Alhambra, a palace complex of such breathtaking beauty it seems like a dream, frozen in architecture. Delicate stucco work, muqarnas ceilings like honeycomb, courtyards with reflecting pools, inscriptions praising God carved into every surface. It was the last gasp of Al-Andalus, beautiful and doomed. In 1469, 2 teenagers married, uniting the most powerful kingdoms in Christian Iberia. Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon, Los Reyes Católicos, the Catholic monarchs, would transform Spain forever. They were pragmatic, ambitious, and ruthlessly effective. They centralized power, crushing rebellious nobles who'd grown too independent during centuries of frontier warfare. They reformed the legal system, established the Santa Hermandad, a rural police force that brought order to lawless countryside. They patronized Christopher Columbus when no one else would, gambling on his mad scheme to reach Asia by sailing west. But their most consequential acts were driven by religious fanaticism. In 1478, they established the Spanish Inquisition, a tool designed to ensure religious conformity. Its tribunals hunted conversos, Jews and Muslims who'd converted to Christianity but were suspected of secretly practicing their old faiths. Torture was routine. Burning at the stake, the auto da fe became public spectacle. In January 1492, their armies finally conquered Granada. Boabdil, the last Nasrid Sultan, surrendered the keys to the Alhambra and went into exile, reportedly weeping as he looked back at his lost kingdom from a mountain pass, still called the Moor's Last Sigh. 3 months later, Isabella and Ferdinand issued the Alhambra Decree. All Jews in Spain had 4 months to convert to Christianity or leave. Between 40,000 and 200,000 Jews fled, abandoning their homes, businesses, and communities. Those who stayed faced the Inquisition's suspicion for generations. In August 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed from Palos with 3 ships and 90 men, searching for a western route to Asia. He stumbled onto the Americas instead, unknowingly opening the door to the greatest colonial empire the world had ever seen. Spain was unified, victorious, and poised to dominate the world. What followed was unprecedented. Within 50 years, Spanish conquistadors had conquered empires that dwarfed Spain itself. Hernán Cortés, with 600 men, toppled the Aztec Empire, exploiting internal divisions and bringing diseases that killed millions. Francisco Pizarro, with even fewer soldiers, destroyed the Inca Empire, capturing and executing the god king Atahualpa for a ransom of gold that filled an entire room. These weren't honorable victories. They were campaigns of breathtaking brutality, massacres of unarmed civilians, deliberate spread of disease, enslavement on an industrial scale, destruction of entire cultures. The native population of the Americas collapsed by perhaps 90% within a century, the greatest demographic catastrophe in human history. But from Spain's perspective, the conquests were glorious and profitable beyond imagination. Silver from Potosi in Peru and Zacatecas in Mexico flooded into Spanish coffers. Galleons laden with treasure crossed the Atlantic in convoys, protected by warships from English and Dutch pirates. This wealth funded armies, built palaces, and allowed Spain to dominate European politics. The Spanish Empire expanded relentlessly. The Philippines, named for King Philip II, became an Asian outpost, a link in a trade network that spanned the globe. Spanish governors ruled in Naples, Sicily, and Milan. The Low Countries, modern Belgium and Netherlands, formed Spain's richest European possessions. Through dynastic marriages, Spain gained control of Portugal and its empire from 1580 to 1640, briefly uniting the 2 greatest colonial powers under one crown. At its height under Philip II, Spain was the world's first global superpower. The sun literally never set on Spanish territory. From Manila to Madrid, from Lima to Lisbon, Spanish was the language of power, Catholicism the official religion, and Spanish law the framework of government. This wealth and power funded a cultural explosion. The Spanish Golden Age produced art and literature that still resonates today. Diego Velázquez painted masterpieces like Las Meninas, playing with perspective and reality in ways that wouldn't be matched for centuries. El Greco's elongated figures and supernatural lighting captured mystical religious fervor. Painters filled churches and palaces with canvases celebrating Spanish power and Catholic devotion. Writers like Miguel de Cervantes created Don Quixote, widely considered the first modern novel, a work that satirized chivalric romances while exploring profound questions about reality, madness, and idealism. Playwrights like Lope de Vega and Calderón de la Barca wrote thousands of plays performed in corrales, open-air theaters where nobles and commoners alike gathered for entertainment. Madrid, transformed from a modest town into Spain's capital by Philip II, grew into a cosmopolitan center. The Habsburgs built the massive monastery of El Escorial, part palace, part monastery, part mausoleum, a granite monument to Spanish power and Catholic piety. But cracks were appearing in the foundation. Spain's wealth was an illusion. The silver flowing from the Americas didn't stay in Spain. It paid for endless wars, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against England, against France, against the Ottomans. Spanish kings spent borrowed money fighting battles that achieved little except draining the treasury. The Spanish economy stagnated. Why invest in industry when gold and silver arrived by the shipload? Inflation soared as precious metals flooded the market. Agriculture declined as young men left for the army or colonies. Spain imported manufactured goods from England, France, and the Netherlands, sending its silver straight into competitors' economies. Military defeats mounted. The Spanish Armada, sent to invade England in 1588, was destroyed by storms and English guns, shattering the myth of Spanish invincibility. The 30 Years' War bled Spain dry without achieving its goals. The Dutch Republic won independence after 80 years of savage warfare. Portugal broke away in 1640. France eclipsed Spain as Europe's dominant power. The Spanish Habsburgs declined into genetic dysfunction. Centuries of inbreeding to keep power within the family produced Charles II, so physically and mentally impaired he could barely function. When he died in 1700 without heirs, his death triggered the War of Spanish Succession, a European-wide conflict over who would inherit the Spanish throne. The Bourbons, a French dynasty, won the throne, but Spain emerged weakened, stripped of its Italian and Low Countries possessions. It was still a colonial power, still wealthy by some measures, but no longer dominant. The 19th century was catastrophic. Napoleon invaded in 1808, placing his brother on the Spanish throne. The Spanish people rose in savage guerrilla warfare, the Peninsular War, that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Meanwhile, Spain's American colonies, seeing the metropole weak and distracted, launched independence movements. One by one, they broke away. Argentina, Chile, Peru, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela. By 1825, Spain's vast American empire had collapsed, leaving only Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Even these were lost in 1898, seized by the United States in the Spanish-American War, a humiliating defeat that scarred Spanish national consciousness. Spain turned inward, racked by political instability, coups, and civil wars. The 20th century brought brief hope with the Second Republic, then descended into nightmare with the Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939. It was a preview of World War II. Fascists, backed by Hitler and Mussolini, fighting Republicans, socialists, and anarchists, backed by Stalin. Over 500,000 died. Cities were bombed. Atrocities on both sides shocked the world. Francisco Franco's nationalists won, establishing a fascist dictatorship that lasted until Franco's death in 1975. Spain, once the world's most powerful nation, had become a backwater, economically stagnant, politically repressive, isolated from democratic Europe. Franco's death opened the door to transformation. The transition to democracy was remarkably peaceful. King Juan Carlos, installed by Franco but committed to democracy, helped guide Spain toward constitutional monarchy and parliamentary government. In 1986, Spain joined the European Union. The economy modernized rapidly. Barcelona and Madrid became vibrant, cosmopolitan cities once again. Today, Spain is a prosperous democracy, a cultural powerhouse, a popular destination for millions of tourists who walk the same streets once trod by Roman legions, Muslim scholars, and Habsburg kings. The Alhambra still enchants visitors. The Prado Museum houses masterpieces from Spain's golden age. Sagrada Familia continues rising in Barcelona, Antoni Gaudi's unfinished cathedral that blends Gothic tradition with modernist vision. But Spain still grapples with its past. Regional identities in Catalonia and the Basque Country challenge Spanish unity. The legacy of Franco remains contested. The conquistadors, once celebrated as heroes, are now recognized as architects of genocide. The Inquisition, the expulsion of Jews and Muslims, the colonial exploitation, all cast long shadows. Understanding Spain's journey from medieval kingdoms to global superpower to modern democracy reveals fundamental truths about empire, power, and cultural resilience. Spain's rise was fueled by religious fervor, maritime daring, and ruthless military conquest. Its decline stemmed from economic mismanagement, military overextension, and the inevitable resistance of conquered peoples seeking freedom. The story of Spain is humanity's story writ large. Ambition and cruelty, genius and folly, triumph and tragedy, all woven together into one of history's most compelling narratives. If you found this journey through Spanish history fascinating, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss where we're going next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the past.